The African-American Legends series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, and religion, areas where blacks had previously been ignored because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is David N. Dinkins, the 106th mayor of the great city of New York. Welcome to African-American Legends, Dave.
Thank you, fighter pilot.
That's it. We've done a lot together.
This audience understand that you're a fighter pilot?
Yeah, I think they do.
Tuskegee Airman, first to shoot down a jet while flying a prop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're a real hero.
Yeah. Well, you were the 106th mayor. You were the first black mayor in this town.
Well, that's true, but Roscoe, you know better than most that were it not for you and a lot of people like you, I never would have achieved it. Percy Sutton, Charlie Rangel, Basil Patterson, and of course the rumple genius Bill Lynch.
Bill Lynch.
And a lot of women, I realize I named men just now, but there are lots of women who were there.
Hazel and Dukes.
Hazel Dukes. And my bride of over 50 years, Joyce.
I shouldn't ask you on television to tell the joke about the ditch digger,
but
it is so apocryphal.
I'll tell it.
I'm going to ask you to do it, and George will kill me.
Well, when I was mayor, I'm riding along in the city limo, and Joyce is with me, and we see a fellow with a shovel digging a ditch. And I said, Joyce, of course it's her name, Joyce. I said, Joyce, isn't that the fellow you used to date? The fellow over there with the shovel digging a ditch. And I said, now, don't misunderstand me. There's nothing wrong with ditch digging. I have dug ditches, waited tables, worked in factories, shined shoes. I sold shopping bags at the corner of 125th Street and 8th Avenue. Used to buy them 3 for a nickel and sell them at 2 cents a piece. So when I was about 8 years old. So I've had all kinds of jobs. I'm not knocking that, but that is the fellow you used to date. She says, yeah, as a matter of fact, it is. I said, see, if you'd married him, you'd be the wife of a ditch digger. She said, no, if I'd married him, he'd be mayor.
Very good. That's a great one. George really enjoys that. It really does. Well, as you reflect now, those 4 years, 1990 to 94, a lot of things happened in this town, and you being the first African-American mayor had a lot of pressures on you, and in addition, a lot of issues that came up. As you reflect on those 4 years, what are the things that come most to the fore in your reflections?
Well, the big thing, of course, was we didn't have any money, and there was a lot of crime. And as I am fond of reminding people that the crime did not commence on January the 1st, 1990 when I assumed office, but there really was some crime on December 31st, 1989. Although when they write about it, you would think that it all commenced in 1990. So we developed a plan, and the we is Lee Patrick Brown, who was my police commissioner, who later became the mayor of Houston, Texas, a wonderful guy. He and Ray Kelly, who's the current police commissioner, was the first deputy at that time, and they did an analysis of the police department which hadn't been done in a quarter century, and the product was a little book almost, and it demonstrated what we needed, and among other things, it needed a lot of money, and we got that by going to Albany and getting their permission to tax ourselves. It was a surcharge on personal income tax. Not a very popular thing, but there was a great need for it, so we were able to persuade the business community and the city council, and then we had to work on the state legislature. I recall on one occasion when I pleaded with a white senator from New York City I'm talking about how badly we need this. I said, people are dying in Harlem and other places in our city. And he said, Mr. Mayor, my constituents are concerned with auto theft and graffiti. He was dead serious. But thanks to Milt Mullen, who was the deputy mayor for that area that included police and fire, probation and whatnot. And I have to say that Peter Vallone, who was the leader of the city council, the speaker, was very helpful. and we got it done. And crime started to go down in 1991, a fact which is recognized today because Ray Kelly is again the police commissioner. But interestingly enough, at the time that Rudy was in office, no one seemed to remember that crime started to go down back in 91.
One of the issues had to do with the number of police on the streets. I think the police department had gone down to 25 or 26,000 officers. With the money from Safe Streets, Safe Cities, we were able to increase the number of police officers to 35, 37,000, went up as high as 40,000. I think now it's around 38,000. And that raises an interesting question, because you called your program Cops and Kids.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Safe Streets, Safe Cities.
I'm pleased that you remember that. The title was Safe Streets, Safe Cities, subtitle Cops and Kids, because we recognize the need to do things for young people. And so such things as the Beacon program came along, and the Beacon name was taken from one speech I'd made where we spoke about beacons of light or something like that. And the idea was to use schools for hours beyond instruction time, and there were programs that were designed by the community and paid for by the city, and to this very day, even now, Rudy kept them, and Bloomberg, even now they have schools that are called Beacon schools, and I'm told that elsewhere in the country they have copied this. I don't personally take credit for it. It's a wonderful people with whom I had the privilege of working that helped design these kinds of things.
You know, when I was president of Bronx Community College, we started under your administration one of the first Beacon programs in the Bronx, in Highbridge. And that program still survives. Schools were open from 3 to 11, GED programs, job training programs, community recreation programs, family programs. And it's a concept that everyone recognizes now is necessary. The school day just doesn't end at 3 or 3:30. There are children who need to be served. There are families that want to be served. There are people who want to get additional education. So that was something that was positive. Now, what criticism did you get when you began to do that? Because I know some people in the community were concerned that you're putting too much emphasis on cops and not enough emphasis on housing and education.
Right. Well, that's true. But my experience is that you're going to have advocates for health care and others for education, others for housing, others for police and whatnot. And when you respond to one thing, if it appears to the others that you have disproportionately responded, you're going to get some complaints. But what we attempted to do, and I think we did fairly well considering the limited resources, was to respond in each of these areas. With Governor Cuomo, we had what was called the New York plan, where we helped produce housing. It was particularly important for the homeless and for including people who had AIDS and whatnot. I remember spending $47 million to keep each branch library open 6 days a week. Now, that may not sound like much, but you will remember, Dr. Brown, that this is something that hadn't occurred since, I think, 47. All the branch libraries open 6 days a week. So, but we determined to spend the money in that fashion. As a friend of mine, Dr. Esther Fuchs, is fond of saying, a budget is a political document. And we budgeted that way because that was what was important to us. I don't want to fail to mention what to me was one of our real highlights, and that was bringing Nelson Mandela here in 1990. He had just gotten out of prison, more than 27 years in prison, fighting against apartheid, and it was a great moments of my life to watch him descend the steps of the plane. And because to me, he's not as tall as Bill Clinton. Clinton is maybe 6'1" or 2", but I think of Mandela as 7 feet tall. But when you see them standing next to each other, you realize that physically he's not that tall. But what a hero, and not an ounce of bitterness, not an ounce of bitterness.
He's a world hero.
And
No
when he
question
stayed
about
with us at Gracie Mansion, and the big thing, my wife and I had this debate on the question of whether he was too tall for the bed. Because in my mind, he was real long. Joyce said, no, he'll fit, and he did. She was right as usual. And he was the same, I noticed, whether playing with my grandchildren or responding to Ted Koppel, who attempted to box him in. You may remember that interview. And Ted wanted to know about, well, what about the communists? And Mandela, just as calm and cool as you could be, said, well, they were the only ones that helped us. That put an end to that. So he was a remarkable man, and Truth and Reconciliation, of course, has demonstrated that if people in other parts of the world, particularly the Middle East and Northern Ireland, if they can emulate what blacks and whites in South Africa have achieved, then we'll have a greater opportunity for peace in the world. I have to confess that all is not perfect in South Africa today, but it's a whole lot better than it was, and they're moving along.
They're having their third election on April 14th or 15th, and Becky, who is Mandela's successor, is probably going to win, but there are a number of minority parties, which is part of democracy.
Which is a good thing.
The United States is the only democracy I know where we have two parties, and the minority parties
well, Thabo and Becky is a friend also. I got to know him, and I see him at least once a year as I have another activity, a board on which I serve that meets once a year in South Africa. And so we always see Madiba, as Nelson Mandela is called, and most often we also get to meet with the president, Thabo Mbeki.
Now tell me, with all of the great things that you did in your 4 years, why do you think that the electorate chose not to give you another 4-year term?
Well, I am asked that question a lot, as you might imagine, and I ask people to go back and remember the election that we won in 1989. 1.9 million votes cast, and we had a margin of about 50 or 60,000, which means, of course, that 25 to 30,000 shifted, it would have changed the outcome. This notwithstanding, in a city with a overwhelming Democratic enrollment, 5 to 2, I think, something like that, I had 3 opponents in the primary. Ed Kotz, the longtime incumbent, Jay Golden, the controller, who I say is one of the brightest people I've ever met about municipal government, certainly New York City government, and Dick Ravitch, highly successful businessman who ran the MTA and did a good job. Those were my 3 opponents, and the conventional wisdom was that we would not get enough to win, because even if I finished first, I wouldn't have 40%, and there'd be a runoff. And the other 3 opponents, each of whom was Jewish, and their supporters would gang up on me and I would lose. Well, Roscoe, thanks to you and a lot of your viewers, we got better than 50%. So there's no runoff. The day following the election, we gathered on City Hall steps, and Koch and Jay Golden and Dick Ravitch each endorsed my candidacy. We figure we're going to win this thing. Now, it may be that Rudy was a great American, but who knew at that point? And the margin by which we lost was almost the same margin by which we had won. And so the reporters used to ask me, well, why do you think that is? And I would simply respond, well, why do you ask? Today, when I'm asked that question, I say racism, pure and simple.
Well, the Crown Heights situation was played up, and that tended to swing some of the voters. In retrospect, how do you feel about that?
Well, it did, and I'm glad you asked that. I don't think that that made the difference, and I want to talk about that. I think the difference, although votes are fungible, but if I had to pick one thing, I'd say Staten Island and the secession vote, because we came out of Staten Island 40,000 votes behind Rudy, and the reason there was such a big vote a big turnout was the secession question that was on the ballot. But with respect to Crown Heights, frequently I read, not so much today, but I used to read that there was rioting culminating in the death of Yankel Rosenbaum. Well, that's really not what happened. Rebbe's motorcade, the last vehicle fell behind, sped up in order to catch up, went through a light, lost control, hopped up on the curb, and struck 2 black children. Gavin Cato was killed. His cousin was injured. And the ambulances came and took away the driver of the vehicle and the people who had been with him. I don't think anybody there was injured at all. And the rumors spread that the whites had been taken off to hospitals to be cared for, and the black children were left to die. Mm-hmm. Well, now that wasn't true, but when that rumor spread in the neighborhood, a few roving gangs of blacks went out to get almost anybody white, and they were shouting, "Get the Jews!" And Yankel Rosenbaum, a scholar from Australia, Hasidic scholar, was attacked and knifed. They took him to the hospital. I visited him in the hospital. It appeared that he was going to be okay. The doctor said he was going to be all right. But they had overlooked a second wound, even though the ambulance attendants had noted this wound. And so he died. And the rioting that ensued after those first few hours, they went on sporadically for several days, not continually, but off and on, were blacks attacking Jews. And the word went out that I, the black mayor, and Lee Brown, the black police commissioner, had held back the police and permitted blacks to attack Jews. Now that was not true. That is not what had happened. And I had to endure a lot of real hateful commentary by some people who were Jewish who heretofore thought I was all right. When our city was safe, following the Rodney King verdict, I was a hero. But all of a sudden now, I, who along with Percy Sutton and others had helped to form the Blacks Against Black Americans Against Israel in support of Israel Committee, when the United Nations had come out with this resolution that said that racism and Zionism are the same, and we opposed that. Incidentally, they've reversed that now in the United Nations. Pardon me. Charlie Rangel and I and others went to Israel when the missiles were falling there, and all this they give me credit for, but they said, but we had failed because we permitted, and the operative word is permit. We did not permit. And I was out there in the street in Crown Heights, ducking bricks and bottles. I remember one time when the cops didn't want me to go out there. They were afraid that I might be injured. And I said, no way am I going to not go. This is my town. And but it is a sad commentary on our city. It's something that never should have happened. And but my Jewish friends, they remember the Holocaust, and they see any encroachment as yielding perhaps to those kinds of days and times, and I can understand that.
There has been a reconciliation of sorts in Crown Heights.
Oh yeah,
Richard Green and some of the rabbis
Crown Heights
there
Youth Collective.
The Youth Collective.
He's a Marine, you know.
Which we helped to, Marines helped to win the war, after the Air Force, of course. But there has been a reconciliation in that sense. Now that you are the former mayor, as you say, you've been elected a private citizen, what are you doing to use the influence and the goodwill that you developed during your administration?
Well, I go lots of places, and I have an advantage over my friends who are still in public office or seeking public office, because folks know that I'm not seeking any office. And so, as I'm fond of saying, you've heard me say many times that now that I've been elected a private citizen, I go where I wish. And so people receive me warmly, and it really makes one feel very good. But I'm there because I love them, I believe in the causes, particularly anything involving young people. Youth, the little ones are the absolute best, but the other ones, I teach graduate students, and they're okay, but I really love the little ones. And I'm interested in health care. Along with you, we work on the Black Leadership Commission on AIDS, which I think is important. 1 in 50 black men is HIV positive, 1 in 160 black women. So how can you not do something about it? I did a public service announcement just the other day on cancer. We blacks are more susceptible, it appears, for.
And you have something to do with tennis, I believe.
Yeah, Lord, I love tennis. I'm on the board of the.
First of all, you play. You play.
I
2
do.
or 3 times a week.
I play. When people ask me, do I still play tennis? And my usual response is, no, I've cut back to 5 times a week. But I do play. On a normal week, I play Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 a.m. And Saturday and Sunday at 9. And a couple hours on the weekends, 2 hours each day, and about an hour and a half during the week, starting at 7 a.m. And I really enjoy it. I have a good time, and I encourage young and old to play tennis.
Do you spend any time criticizing the current mayor?
Well, I do, but not like I criticize Rudy. Rudy left much of which to be critical, particularly in the area of what I see as human rights and civil rights. I will never ever forget him saying when Doris Mann was killed that, oh well, he was no altar boy anyhow. A man who was struck down, shot, killed, committing no crime, no weapon, bothering nobody.
Shot by the police, that is.
Shot by the police. Now, and of course there's Diallo, and I chair the Amadou Diallo Foundation. But with respect to Michael Bloomberg, I like him personally. I think that he is a philanthropist and was before his involvement in politics. As you know, he was a Democrat who ran as a Republican because there was no other way he'd get a shot. He should not have won that election, I might add. Mark Green really should have won, but you need another another show to talk about that story. But I have said of Mike Bloomberg, as a matter of fact, I introduced him on Martin Luther King Day at Al Sharpton's National Action Network, which this year was held at Canaan Baptist Church on 116th Street. And in introducing him, I said that I think he's better than his poll numbers. His poll numbers have increased a little bit in the last few weeks, but he was really way down, and I think he's better than that. But I do, and I said that my main complaint with him is his friends, meaning the governor in Albany and the president in Washington.
Well, as we come to the close of our wonderful discussion today, could you reflect on whether or when there will be another African-American mayor of the great city of New York?
Well, as to whether, absolutely there will be. I think Billy Thompson, who's the current controller, should he decide to run, and he hasn't made the judgment yet, would have an excellent chance at success. The incumbent mayor is going to be difficult to unseat because he's very wealthy, and he has the incumbency. I don't know yet what Freddie Ferrer will do. Rumor has it that he will run, but there certainly will be. We have the good fortune of having a lot of wonderful, effective, competent black men and women of generations before ours, for yours and mine, who are coming along, and as we say, everybody stands on somebody's shoulders. And when we say that, we make reference to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Rosa Parks, and for me personally, Percy Sutton, who ran for mayor in '77 with such class and distinction that nobody laughed at me when I dared try in '89. And I anticipate that David Patterson and Keith Wright and all these young folks coming along, the Billy Thompsons of the world, there are a lot of bright young guys coming along, and women.
Virginia Fields,
Virginia, the borough president of Manhattan.
Helen Marshall,
Helen, borough president of
Queens.
And incidentally, these women, along with our sister Hazel Dukes, will tell us in a minute, we helped you all get where you're going, and now it's our turn and we want some help. And of course we respond.
What message would you like to leave to the young people?
I'd like to remind them that they are as good as anybody and better than most. And when they have an opportunity to rub shoulders with others out here in the world, they will find that they are that good. And they need to have confidence in themselves and to work hard and let nobody put them down.
So you see, African-American Legends is about how African-Americans have succeeded despite those barriers of segregation and racism. And you, David N. Dinkins, make all African-Americans very proud. Today on African-American Legends, we've been talking with David N. Dinkins, the 106th mayor of the great city of New York. Thanks, Dave, for being with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Very much.